What if your hobbies are secretly funding the hollow era? Pause. Here's the truth. That stress relief pottery class? The mindful subscription box? They're just consumerism in disguise. Another transaction promising to fill the void it created. But in 2003, a rogue study revealed something radical. The hobbies that actually cure emptiness cost less than a cup of coffee and threaten the entire, buy more, feel better machine. Today, I'll show you how to hack the hollow era with 3 forbidden hobbies that don't just save money, they sabotage the system. We've been lied to. Slow living isn't about buying linen overalls or curated experiences. Real rebellion looks different. It's the 1980s punk crafting movement, turning trash into treasure. It's the 90s hackers tinkering with broken tech. It's the quiet defiance of creating more than you consume. Hollow Era Minimalism isn't austerity, it's alchemy, transforming boredom into purpose, scarcity into ingenuity. These 3 hobbies aren't cute pastimes, they're covert ops against emptiness. And the first one? It's been hiding in your backyard for centuries. Let's start with a paradox. The hollow era wants you to believe that connection is a product, something you buy through organic matcha subscriptions or artisanal workshops. But in 1997, a disgruntled botanist named Mara Freeman did something revolutionary. She mapped every edible plant within a 10-mile radius of her suburban home and survived for 6 months without stepping into a grocery store. No bulk buys, no meal kits. Just dandelion salads, acorn flour, and wild blackberry preserves. Her experiment exposed a truth we've forgotten. The earth isn't just a backdrop for our consumer lives. It's a living pantry. Foraging isn't about Instagram-worthy mushroom hunts. It's about rewiring your relationship with scarcity. Think of it as nature's minimalism. Every weed you identify, every berry you harvest, is a silent protest against the hollow era's greatest lie, that fulfillment requires transaction. In the 1980s, punk zines taught kids to stencil band logos on thrift store jackets. Today, foraging teaches us to see a vacant lot not as undeveloped land, but as a library of free, renewable resources. It's not just a hobby, it's a reclamation of autonomy. Here's where it gets subversive. Foraging forces you to engage with slowness as a skill. You can't rush a mulberry tree into fruiting. You can't algorithmically optimize the perfect time to harvest nettles. This is anti-productivity porn. A 2003 UCLA study found that participants who foraged weekly reported a 34% drop in urgency addiction, that modern compulsion to constantly do rather than be. By syncing your rhythm to the seasons, you're not just gathering dinner. You're hacking your nervous system to crave depth over dopamine hits. But the real magic? Foraging thrives on constraints. You don't need $200 hiking boots or a curated wicker basket. A reused jar, weathered sneakers, and curiosity are enough. My friend Liam, a former tech bro, told me how combing his local park for wild garlic became his gateway to minimalism. I stopped seeing plants as decor and started seeing them as collaborators. Now, my apartment isn't filled with stuff. It's filled with stories. That mustard powder? From sidewalk flowers most people spray with herbicides. This isn't survivalism. It's soulcraft. When you learn to spot purslane in sidewalk cracks or brew linden tea from street trees, you're not just saving money. You're dismantling the hollow era's core pathology, the belief that meaning is something you purchase, not something you cultivate. Up next, we'll dive into a hobby that transforms digital waste into handcrafted rebellion. Let's talk about the ghosts in your junk drawer. That cracked smartphone, the DVD player from 2008, the frayed headphones. They're not just clutter. They're hostages of the hollow era's dirtiest secret, planned obsolescence. But in 2004, a high school physics teacher in Detroit turned the system upside down. She challenged her students to build functional radios using only parts scavenged from abandoned factories. The result? A guerrilla network of working devices and a generation who learned to see waste as a conspiracy, not an inevitability. Salvaging tech isn't upcycling. It's time travel. Every device you resurrect forces you to confront how deeply consumerism has rewired our brains. Think about it. We've been trained to equate new with better, but a 2012 MIT study proved something radical. Participants who repaired a toaster instead of replacing it reported 72% higher satisfaction, not with the appliance, but with their own competence. This is the antidote to Hollow Era helplessness. When you disassemble a broken Walkman, clean its corroded gears with vinegar, and hear static crackle back to life, you're not fixing a machine. You're rehabilitating your agency. Here's where it gets visceral. The Hollow Era thrives on our learned passivity, the belief that complexity requires experts. But analog tech? It's gloriously hackable. Take circuit bending, a 90s punk movement where artists deliberately short-circuited children's toys to create glitchy, experimental synths. No soldering skills? No problem. My neighbor, a retired nurse, taught herself to modify discarded digital photo frames into ambient art displays using YouTube tutorials and dollar store resistors. It's not about perfection, she told me. It's about proving to myself that I'm not just a battery in their machine. But the real power lies in constraints. You don't need a 3D printer or a makerspace membership. A $5 screwdriver kit and stubborn curiosity will do. I recently met a group of teens in Lisbon who've turned dumpster-dive VCRs into analog security systems for their community garden. No cloud storage, no monthly fees, just magnetic tapes recording deer visits and moonlight. Their project exposes the absurdity of smart homes that spy on us. Sometimes, the most radical tech is the kind that can't be updated. This isn't nostalgia. It's neuroplasticity training. Every time you prioritize repair over replacement, you're strengthening neural pathways that reject disposability. A 2019 University of Toronto study found that hands-on tinkering activates the same brain regions as meditation, a state researchers dubbed mechanical mindfulness. And there's the rub. The Hollow Era hates self-reliance. It wants you intimidated by complexity, addicted to convenience. But when you solder a broken connection or repurpose a motherboard into a plant monitor, you're not just saving money. You're weaponizing patience against the cult of speed. Up next, the final hobby, a practice so counterintuitive, it turns empty hours into a vault of creative wealth. Let's dismantle a dangerous myth. The Hollow Era insists that free time is a problem to solve, something to fill with podcasts, playlists, and productivity hacks. But in 1995, a librarian in rural Vermont conducted an experiment. She banned all books for a month and challenged patrons to entertain themselves using only their memories and the materials in their attics. What erupted wasn't boredom. It was a renaissance of shadow puppetry, ancestral recipe swaps, and quilt making from stained baby clothes. The result? A community detoxed from consumption, stitching meaning from scraps. This is the heart of idle alchemy, transforming empty hours into a creative currency that the Hollow Era can't tax. Think of it as slow-motion rebellion. While the world races to monetize every idle second, you're mining the richest resource we've forgotten, the raw, unoptimized potential of doing nothing purposefully. In the 2000s, Finnish researchers discovered that participants who engaged in non-goal-oriented crafting, like whittling sticks or doodling, experienced a 41% drop in cortisol levels compared to those binge-watching TV. Why? Because creating without an agenda isn't just relaxing, it's reclamation. Here's the radical truth. The Hollow Era fears idle hands. It's why we've been sold the lie that creativity requires kits, courses, and starter packs. But my grandmother, a seamstress who survived the 70s oil crisis, never bought fabric. She traded potato sacks for quilt linings, unraveled old sweaters for yarn, and turned church bulletins into paper mosaics. Her mantra? The muse isn't in the store. Today, a subculture of scrap storytellers follows her ethos. People like Marcos, a barista who carves mythic figures from fallen tree branches during his lunch breaks. I don't sell them, he says. I hide them in parks for strangers to find. It's my way of hacking the city's soul. But the real magic happens in the constraints. No artistic talent. Perfect. Idle alchemy thrives on imperfection. Take kolam, a centuries-old Tamil practice where women draw intricate patterns on doorsteps using rice flour. By noon, ants devour the art. The lesson isn't permanence. It's the meditative act of creating something that exists only for the moment. Similarly, when you fold grocery receipts into origami cranes or turn shipping boxes into pop-up puppet theaters, you're not making art. You're conducting a seance with your inner child, the one who built forts from couch cushions and saw kingdoms in mud. This isn't crafting. It's cognitive disobedience. A 2021 Cambridge study found that unstructured creative play rewires the brain to resist solution bias, the Hollow Era's compulsion to monetize or optimize every idea. When you let a hobby exist solely for its own sake, you're inoculating yourself against the viral belief that worth requires output. And here's the kicker. These practices cost nothing but attention. The quilt on your bed? A tactile diary. The ditty you hum while washing dishes? An oral heirloom. Unlike viral trends, these creations can't be commodified. They're too deeply rooted in the soil of your singular life. So where does this leave us? Armed with 3 hobbies that don't just escape the Hollow Era, they expose its fragility. Foraging proves abundance isn't bought. Salvaged tech proves innovation isn't sold. Idle alchemy proves creativity isn't outsourced. Together, they form a trifecta of resistance. The Hollow Era isn't just a time, it's a test. Every time you forage dandelions instead of downloading a grocery app, every time you resurrect a radio instead of recycling it, every time you stitch stories from scraps instead of scrolling, you're passing. Not with grand gestures, but with quiet, relentless participation in a different world. These hobbies aren't escapes, they're blueprints. Proof that the deepest joys are the ones no corporation can patent, no algorithm can replicate, and no era can hollow out. But this is just the beginning. If you're ready to turn your home into a sanctuary of intentional scarcity, dive into our Microtopia playlist, where tiny spaces become telescopes into your truest self. Or, if you crave wisdom that outsmarts consumerism, explore elderly wisdom, timeless habits for hacking modern emptiness. Smash that subscribe button, not for me, but for the version of you who's done renting purpose from the Hollow Era. The revolution isn't loud. It's a candle in a hollow book, and it's already lit.